Hello everyone. This video is about how to automate document processing, moving your invoices from inbox to database using Oracle Integration 3. The use case we will be discussing here is that you receive your invoice files in email as an attachment, and how to automate the process of getting those invoices from inbox and storing those invoice data all the way to a database table. So in this video, I will walk you through an OIC scheduled integration that I have built. The high level steps is like that the integration runs on a schedule. It accesses a particular Outlook email account, checks for new email in the Outlook folder. Then it extracts the invoice documents from the email attachments, store those invoices in the object storage, extract the key information from the invoice using the OCI document understanding service, and then it stores those information in the ATP database table. And then if all these steps have been executed successfully, it goes ahead and archives the read email in a different folder in the Outlook. Now for this solution to work, there is a prerequisite that all the invoices that come as email attachment should have a particular predefined prefix to the file name, right? Because your email might have other attachments that's coming, or even sometime if the signature is having a picture, that is also considered as an attachment for the process, right? So for the integration to understand which files are actually the invoice document file, those files should have a predefined prefix to the file. Now the highlight of this solution is the OIC document understanding action, which is now available as in the component palette of the OIC design console. Right, you don't need to create a separate REST connection or anything. That option is right there for you to drag and use it. Of course, you need to have certain policies in place, and we will talk about it when we do the walkthrough. In this solution, I am using this OIC document understanding action, and it let me to use the pre-trained document understanding model, right? And the pre-trained model as of now support invoices, receipts, driver license, and passports, right? And of course, we will be using the invoice option for this solution. And you will see that any standard invoice format can be interpreted by this model. At the end of the video, we will do a testing using a couple of different looking invoices. Okay. So this is the architecture diagram of the solution that we just discussed. So the OIC runs on a schedule. It retrieves the email and the email attachments from the Outlook account. It then calls the invoice attachment and stores it in a OCI bucket. And after that, it invokes the document understanding service, which then in turn accesses the object storage bucket and retrieves the invoice document, analyzes it, and returns a JSON payload with all the invoice data to the integration. Integration then takes the payload and then stores those invoice information into the ATP database table. And after all these steps, it goes ahead and archives the email that has been read. So of course, the document understanding action is something we are using in this solution. But as we do the walkthrough, we will also take a look how OIC is using the Office 365 Outlook adapter to access the Outlook email and do all the email extraction, attachment extraction sort of activity. And we are also, of course, using the object storage action to store those documents, and Oracle ATP adapter to access the database. So let's get to the OIC console now. Okay, so this is my integration. It starts with a schedule process, and then I'm doing an invoke using the MS Outlook connection that I have created. I will put the Outlook adapter documentation link in the reference, as in how to create that connection prerequisite. So using this invoke, what I'm trying to do here is getting all the Outlook folder related informations. So I'm doing a get folders over here, which will return me all the folders that is associated with my Outlook account and their corresponding IDs. Okay, and why I am doing this is, let me show you how my Outlook is configured. Okay, so this is how my Outlook account looks like. So I have a folder called Invoice over here, and the rules I have set that whenever any invoice emails comes, it comes inside this particular folder, right? And I have also created a processed invoice folder that once this invoice is processed by my integration, the data is in database, this email will be archived inside this processed invoice folder. So in the integration, what I want is, like, I want my integration to come and look inside this particular invoice folder in my account. Okay, so in order to do that, I am doing in the next invoke, I'm again doing another invoke on the same Outlook connection, and in this invoke, basically I am asking it to get messages of a folder, right? And you can add query parameters if you want to do more filtering on your search. I don't have any. So that's about in the second invoke. And if you see in this map, what I'm doing, I'm getting the folder ID out of this invoke, and I'm mapping the folder ID of the invoice folder through this map to this particular invoke. Okay, so it needs a folder ID, and if you look over here, I am passing the value of the invoice folder ID to the next invoke so that it knows that it need to look into the invoice folder. Now this invoke returns me all the email messages that is present at that point in the invoice folder, right? So I'm looping over all the messages that it gets, and for each of the messages I am doing another invoke on the same Outlook connection, and this time I'm trying to get all the attachment that is associated with one particular email, right? So the operation I'm using is the get an attachment collection. You can also do get an attachment here, but I want to get all the attachment out of that email, so I'm doing this one. And again, you can add more query parameter if you need to, and then that's about this particular invoke, which is returning me all the attachment. Once I get all the attachment from here, the next is I'm basically doing a filter on the attachment. And now you remember about the prerequisite I mentioned, right? So this is where it comes into play, is that if the particular attachment name starts with this prefix, in this case it is inv_abc, then the integration recognizes it as an invoice file, and then it will do further processing with that particular file. Any other attachment will be ignored. So once it gets an attachment with this name, I'm doing a couple of logging just to make sure the file name and everything comes in the log. And then basically what I want to do is first write that particular file in the object storage, right? And in order to do that, I am first doing a stage file, right? Because from the email, what I'm getting is the content bytes, and I am creating a file over here by doing a write file with the OPEX schema in a temp directory. So I'm putting a OPEX schema over here, and so out of my current attachment, the actual content byte that I'm getting, I am writing it over here so that it can create a file reference using this stage file. Okay, and once I get the file reference, I'm using that file reference to write that file in the object storage. So for this object storage, so as you know, like the OCI object storage is an action in the component palette. So I have just dragged that action over here in the object storage, right? And you can choose, like you want to do manage buckets, manage objects. In this case, I want to upload the file, so I want to do a upload object. That's the operation. And then if you have the correct policies in place, all your compartments will be listed over here, and you can choose the compartment you want, and then you can choose the bucket that you want to write your invoice into. Okay, and then in this object storage mapping, I am putting the reference from my stage file action, right? This is where I'm creating the stage file. So the stage file action reference I am putting in the stream reference for the object storage. So that is how it will be writing the attachment that I'm getting out of the email into the object storage. Okay, so now after writing it in the object storage, I am invoking the OCI document understanding over here, right? So this is the action that I have dragged over here, and you need to first configure the prerequisite policies in order to use this, right? So let me show you the documentation quickly. So this is the documentation. You can refer to as in how to use this particular action. I will put the link in the reference. And if you go to the prerequisite for this one, so basically you need to create a dynamic group first. Okay, so you need to go to the domain, and then you need to create a dynamic group, and this particular one you need to put as your matching rule of the dynamic group, and this client ID is the your OIC application client ID. Okay, and then you need to basically have this policy in place to use the document understanding action. So this is the only one I'm using. So you need to allow this dynamic group to manage AI service document family in the compartment for the root compartment. I did it for the root compartment. Okay, so so now if you see how this particular invoke looks like, as I mentioned before, only the pre-trained models can be invoked using this particular action. So that is the category. I have done analyze document over here, and just to for information, these are the other options that are available with this action. And then you put the compartment name over here and document type. So these are the 4 document types that are supported. So for me it is the invoice, and then input source, right? So I wanted this document understanding service to access the object storage and get the invoice file from there and then analyze it, but the inline option is also available. Okay, so I could also just get the attachment directly and pass that content byte directly to the document understanding service if I would have chosen this inline option. but I also wanted that invoice, to be stored in object storage for auditing or future reference purpose. So that is why I have chosen this object storage option over here. And then you give the bucket name wherever your invoice files are and the namespace for that particular bucket, right? So this is what the summary looks like, and that's pretty much it. And after that is done, it returns me a JSON payload with all the invoice data, right? And then I want to store it into the database. So for that, this is my database call. I am directly doing a table insert, and let's take a look on this map so that you understand how the data is returned by the document understanding service, right? So here is the response from the document service, and if you open this response wrapper, so these are all the fields that are available when you choose the option as invoice, the document type as invoice, right? And here are all the invoice header information related fields, and after that you also have this items array over there. All the invoice lines related field get populated, and of course for multiple lines there will be multiple of these items. That is why it is an array, right? So these are all the information that gets populated depending on the document understanding service and the invoice document that it is actually processing. Whatever field it analyzes and extracts out of that document, accordingly these fields, some or all, gets populated, right? And this is my corresponding to my invoice table that I have created in the database. It is just a very basic invoice header table. So I am trying to store the invoice ID, date, total amount, vendor name, address, and also I wanted to store the received from email ID, right? Auditing purpose, just to keep over there that whoever was the sender of that email, right? And that information I'm getting from my Outlook response, right? And I'm getting this from field over here, the email address, which I'm mapping in the received from email ID, and rest of the field that I want to store in the database are coming from the response of the document understanding service. Okay, so this is how it is getting stored into the database. And then the last option is I want to archive that email and put it in the processed invoice folder in my Outlook, right? So that the next time the integration runs and looks for new email in the invoice folder, it does not get conflicted with the ones that has already been processed. So I'm using this move a message operation, and then I will be mapping the folder ID of the processed invoice. So this is my destination ID, so that is the processed invoice, and then the message ID is obviously the current one, that which message I want to move. Okay, so that's how the orchestration looks like. Let me save and activate it and try to run it for a couple of different invoices. Okay. My integration is active, and let's run the integration. To test this one, I have sent 2 email to the Outlook inbox, the invoice folder. Let's take a quick look. So this particular invoice document, it looks like this. It has the name, supplier name, some address, and some invoice number and some basic information, right? So this is one of my invoice that I have sent, and I have sent another one which is like that with a different format of the invoice, right? It also has an amount and the basic invoice information. Both are in my invoice folder over here, and both of them, the expectation is both of them should be picked up and create 2 entries in my invoice table in the database, right? So let's run it. If I open the instance, the instance is in progress. So it's still in progress, but you see there's 2 iterations as expected, as there are 2 emails over there. And it can take a few seconds for those documents to be analyzed and returned. Okay, and now it shows completed. Okay, it's completed. Let's see how so the invoice folder has been emptied. And I see both the invoices are now in my processed invoice folder, right? Let's take a look into the database table. Okay, I see 2 rows in my database over here. So it has populated the invoice ID for both, the invoice date for one of the vendor, this was the name, and for the other it was there, and these are the vendor address, and for both of them the sender email is my email as expected. And let's take a look at the bucket, the storage bucket. So yeah, so these are the 2 invoice files, right? That was there in the inbox, and it has been stored in the object bucket as well. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching.